Hello, Alabama District. I'm Russell Smith, and I am the new District Children's Ministries Director for the Georgia District. And I'm so excited to be able to share with you in this online platform for the All Church Ministry Summit. I know we'd all rather be there in person, but we certainly understand why we're having to do it this way in light of our current situation. I do want to say thank you to Pastor Ken Drawn and Pastor Vint Norris for allowing me to be a part of this summit, and hopefully be able to share some principles with you concerning children's ministry that's going to help you and your church and your ministry. And I want to start by talking about the tightrope of children's ministry. I'm going to have some graphics here on the computer. Balance is a word that we may not hear as much as we need to, but balance has to be an important part of our life, our ministry, and our church. So I want to talk to you about balance in ministry. Maintaining balance every step of the way in our life and in our ministry. So we're going to start with balancing your spiritual relationship, personal devotion. You know, I want to remind all of us, before we're ever called to be a pastor, before we're ever called to be a church worker, a ranger leader, a JBQ leader, whatever it may be, before we're even called to be a church member, we're called to be a follower of Jesus. That personal relationship with Jesus is our foundation, and it's more important than anything. As a matter of fact, ministry flows out of our relationship with Jesus. If that relationship is not right, nothing else we do will be. And so I want to challenge you that you and I both, all of us, we have to maintain that close personal relationship with Jesus. And you have a note page there, and there's a question on there under point B. How did Jesus maintain a vibrant, growing relationship? Now, if Jesus had to have a personal relationship with his Father, how much more are you and I going to have to work at that? But first, let's see what Jesus did. Well, first of all, it was submission and obedience to his Heavenly Father. You know, that is key. We have to submit to the will of our Heavenly Father. We have to obey him in every circumstance, right? Prayer and fasting. Before every miracle that Jesus did, we read that he found a mountainside or he found a place to pray. If Jesus had to pray and fast, how much more do you and I have to do that? What about unconditional surrender? Jesus was unconditionally surrendered to his Father and to his will. And we must be the same. And I have to be honest with you, I can't think of a better place to be than in the control of an almighty God, for our lives to be in his control, in his hands. And so Jesus did that, and we need to as well. And then the word. You know, when Jesus was in the wilderness, the only way that he combated the devil and his temptations was through the word of God. So there in your notes, let's look at these spiritual disciplines. Okay, what disciplines should be a part of our daily life? There's some scriptures listed there for you. We don't have time to go through all of those. But I just want to run through this list. You see this list there, Bible study. Every day we should be reading, studying, and memorizing God's word. We have to put it to work. James 1:22, be doers of the word, not hearers only, deceiving yourself. You say, but Pastor Russell, isn't this the most basic thing for us as believers, as followers of Jesus? We already know this. You know what? We do. But I think too many times we're not reminded enough about the importance of our personal relationship with Jesus. Prayer and fasting, you see the list there. Worship, stewardship, tithing, missions giving, generosity in every way that we can. Living in the Spirit, Galatians 5:16. When we live by the Spirit, we won't gratify the desires of the sinful nature. Reflection, sometimes we just need to stop everything and just reflect on what Jesus has done and what he wants to do. And then lastly, personal evangelism. You and I need to be engaged in personal evangelism. Every time we go to a restaurant, every time we go to the store, we need to find ways that we can reach out to the people that we come in contact with and share the love of Christ. So those are the spiritual disciplines we need in place. Letter D, really what we need to do every single day is keep the fire burning. In Leviticus chapter 6, verses 9 through 13, it talks about how the priest would build an altar and how a sacrifice would be offered and the importance of the fire. And so, I want to challenge every one of you. I'm challenging myself that we need to keep the fire of God burning in our heart and life. If we're going to have a successful and significant ministry, if we're going to be a great staff member, if we're going to be a great team member, we have to keep the fire of God burning in our heart. Every day we've got to add fresh firewood. You know, I love to camp, and one of the things that we have to do when we go camping is we have a supply of firewood so that when the fire begins to get low, we add more fire. Fire has so many purposes in camping or in general, but the fire of God is so important in our life, in our spiritual life as well. And so I just want to challenge you. Remember, the reason our fire goes out is because we don't chop and prepare the wood. And all those spiritual disciplines we talked about, that's what helps keep the fire of God burning. So keep that fire of God burning on the altar of your heart. All right? So that's balancing our spiritual relationship. It has to happen every single day. Personal devotion. The second point that, let me fast forward through those. Okay, there we go. Sorry, I forgot they were on there. Balancing your family relationships. We call this pivotal discipleship. Pivotal discipleship, okay? Balancing your family relationships. I know it may be kind of hard to see, but I've got some pictures of my family here. I know many of you, by coming to Alabama Kids Camp, you've met us before. But I want to tell you, I want to remind you, first of all, we're called to be a follower of Jesus. But our greatest audience for discipleship is our own family. It is very important that we minister to our family. Our family is our greatest ministry. Let me give you some practical ideas. If we were doing this in person, we'd all be discussing this right now. But I'm just going to give you a short list that I made. Devotion, prayer with our spouse and our children. You know, that needs to be a part of a regular family practice, whether that's at the dinner table or in the morning or in the evening, however that happens. But I want to challenge you to have that devotion, prayer time with your spouse and your children. Create dates and meaningful activities for your spouse, for your children. There are times that you and your spouse, if you're married, we all need time away. We have to create those times. Make appointments. You know, there's nothing wrong with doing that. Even with our kids, my wife is not able to travel so much to camp now because of her job, but my kids are there, and so it is. You know, it's an awesome opportunity for them to be involved in ministry as well. Communication is the key. You know, talking to our family, listening to what they're saying, not just hearing what they're saying, but listening to what they're saying is so very important. Include your family in ministry as much as possible. My wife and both my kids have been very involved in kids ministry. As you know, we were at First Assembly in Griffin for 15 and a half years. We were also the kids pastor at First Assembly in Saraland. There in the Mobile area for almost 10 years before we came to Griffin. Our kids were super young then when we were there. So they weren't really involved, but Misty's always been involved in ministry in some way, not necessarily always up front, sometimes in the behind the scenes, but she's always been involved and supportive in every way. So involve your family as much as you can in ministry. Teachable moments. One of the greatest ways that Misty and I have been able to disciple our kids is through teachable moments. Just when something happens in life, just taking time to talk about it and find out why certain things happened, or how would you have done this differently? There are a lot of different ways to use those teachable moments with your family. You know, even with your spouse. You know, what different decision could we have made? Those kinds of things. And the last thing I want to say about this point is, you know, if your own kids aren't getting it, chances are the kids in your ministry won't get it either. So, you know, when we're discipling our kids and we're loving our own children, whether they're biological or adopted or foster kids, whatever the situation is for your family, if our kids aren't getting it, if they're not understanding it, then chances are our kids at church aren't either. And so it's very important that discipleship takes place within our family. The third point I want to talk to you about is balancing your leadership relationships. We call this protocol dynamics. There's a protocol in ministry that should always be followed. And I want to talk about that. This first part is probably more for the children's pastors or the key children's leader or director. But I do believe these principles translate if you're a team member watching this. If you serve in kids ministry, these things would apply to your children's pastor or leader as well. So let's talk about this for a minute. So I want to talk to you about leadership up. Okay, leadership up. This has to do with your senior pastor. In your notes there, number one, how are we, if we're going to lead successfully and be able to accomplish what our senior pastor envisions, here are some things that are important to him. Number one is submission. One thing I learned a long time ago, you will never receive spiritual authority unless you submit to spiritual authority. I've met a lot of people in ministry that they wonder why they struggle to get people to follow them or be a part of what they're doing. And a lot of times I find that it's because they themselves are not submitted to spiritual authority. So I want to challenge you today to be submitted to spiritual authority. Just a few points on that. What does that look like? Well, you can make some notes there. I left you a blank space. But loyalty is very important. If you can't be loyal to the pastor that you're serving under or the children's pastor you're serving, that situation is not going to work for you. It won't work for them. And so I just want to challenge you to be loyal to your pastor. What is important to your pastor must be important to you. As a children's pastor, my agenda was never more important than my pastor's. As a matter of fact, my agenda, it better line up with our pastor. And so I want to challenge you that has to be the case for you in your situation as well. Be a defender. I can tell you there have been times and decisions that our pastors made that I didn't agree with. And people would come to us and maybe complain or they want to find out information that they have no business knowing. And what Misty and I have had to do when they do that is we ask the question, well, have you talked to him? Have you talked to her? Because if they haven't, then we tell them, well, then they're the one you need to talk to. You need to go to them. And we make sure that happens. So that's important. And then give honor and defer praise. Say thank you. You know, anytime our pastor compliments us, we do our best to defer that praise to him and say thank you to him or her. That's very important. So I want to challenge you with that. Also, we're for leadership up, we're there to facilitate the vision and leadership of our pastor. We're there to facilitate the vision and leadership of our children's pastor or leader. So their values, that's very important. We want to facilitate their values. What's important to them, their vision and their goals. I want to read this statement to you. Do everything you can to extend your pastor's influence. I want to say that again. Do everything you can to extend your pastor's influence. What do I mean by that? So one of the things that I try to do every time I make a hospital visit, every time I make a phone call, or anytime I'm around people, I try to always say this statement, hey, pastor wanted me to check on you, or hey, pastor just wanted me to make sure you're doing okay, or pastor sends his love, a statement like that. If we're going to facilitate his vision, his leadership, I want to tell you that's one of the biggest things that you and I can do as someone who is submitted to leadership and facilitating that vision. Always extend the influence of your pastor. That is a very big point. And then communication. When it comes to leadership up, communication with our pastor is very important. Now, every situation is different, so you're going to need to find the things that your pastor wants communicated. I have to tell you, it's not our pastor's job to come to us to tell us what he wants communicated. It is our job to go to our pastor, our children's pastor or leader, and find out what information they want communicated. I can tell you for me, every Sunday, every Wednesday, when service is over, within an hour or two, I have already texted all the numbers, all the how many salvations, how many spirit baptisms, if I have giving statistics for BGMC or giving totals, that kind of thing. I'm giving that information to my pastor. One thing I've learned, it's always better to give more information and let them decide what's important than for me to decide what information they want or need. So I want to challenge you with that. Under communication, you probably want to write that down in that blank space there. So figures and numbers, does he want information by email, or she? Do they want information by email or by text? What's the best way they want communication? You need to ask that. I need to ask that. Communicating testimonies. When something good happens to a family in the church, we need to make sure we communicate that with our pastor and let him know. Because even though our pastors know a lot, they always know more than we do. Sometimes there are things that happen that they may miss. And so we need to make sure and share that good news with them. Family situations, when families are hurting, when families have suffered a job loss or a death or things like that, we need to communicate those things to our pastor. That is so very important. Dates and events. I want to tell you, as a children's pastor, one of the things that I always try to do, can't say I did it with 100% effectiveness, but anytime I was having a meeting with my leaders or any of our families, I would give them the date, the time, the location. Even if they just came by to say hello and pray over everybody, I want to tell you again, that goes a long way, and pastors appreciate that. Make the most of the opportunities you have to spend with your pastor. I have to tell you, even though Griffin is a fairly large church, First Assembly there in Griffin, I learned ways to spend time with my pastor. Sometimes he would walk by and say, hey, come walk with me. It may be 5 minutes, but that's 5 minutes that I needed to take advantage of. And if you're going to say no, you need to learn to say no the right way. That's very important too. So make the most of the opportunities. When he says, hey, let's go do this, okay? If at all possible, make sure you do it, okay? Important. Negative situations. These are things we need to communicate to our pastor. One of the things that our goal is to never let a situation catch our pastor off guard. Anytime there's a negative situation, whether it be within your ministry or something within the church, we communicate that. Don't let things catch him by surprise. If you are aware of the situation, you know what's happened, then communicate that to him or her as soon as possible. That is so very important, okay? And the last point there in the number 4 is be a low-maintenance person. As a staff member, as a team member for children's ministry, be a low-maintenance person. In other words, don't be somebody that your pastor or your children's pastor has to micromanage, because all of us know if that's the case, if our pastor has to think for us, if our pastor has to do our job for us, then we're not needed. And we all know what that means. So I want to challenge you, be a low-maintenance person. Don't be at the center of controversy. Don't be at the center of arguments or division, those kinds of things, okay? It's very important to be a low-maintenance person. And then let's talk about leadership down. Let's talk about leadership down. Trying to find my other page here. All right, leadership down. Letter B, leadership down. Let me ask you this, and I know we're not there together, but what attributes and characteristics do you look for in a leader? I want you to take a moment. I just want you to write down, I'll give you a few seconds, but I want you to write down as many attributes or characteristics that you look for in a leader. Just want you to do that. What kind of attributes, characteristics do you look for in a leader? I want you to write those down. All right, because this leads me to this point, and it's there, right there under letter B, leadership down, the first point. Model the type of leadership you want your leaders to have. Model the type of leadership you want your leaders to have. In other words, if you want those under your leadership to have great people skills, you need to model that. I made a list here. I'm going to read these. You may have gotten some of these same ones. But how about, sorry, didn't mean to bump that. Spiritual passion, passion for the Lord. That is a great, great attribute to have. Teachability. We all need to be teachable. July marked 26 years of full-time ministry, full-time children's ministry for me. But you know what? I'm learning every day. I don't ever want to be in a place where I can't learn and be teachable. Work ethic. You know what? I know I'm not, and Pastor Vint, no comment from you, but I'm not the smartest guy in the world. I know there are far more creative kids pastors than me in the world. But you know what? I'm giving my best to work hard every single day. And I could go to competition about working hard. My dad taught me that. Always work hard in everything you do. So that work ethic, that's a characteristic that you want in all your team members. So model that, when it comes to before an event or after an event, clean up, those kinds of things. Always model what you want your leaders to do. Character, servanthood, humility. I'm just going to kind of go down this list. Having the right attitude is so very important. Conflict resolution. I do not like conflict, but I've learned how to do my best to handle it the right way. So that's important. Teamwork, enthusiasm, consistency. All of these are so very important. So do your leaders see these things in you? Those things that you wrote down on your paper, do your leaders, your team members, do they see those things in your life and in your leadership? Because if they don't, those things probably aren't going to show up in their life, okay? So I want to challenge you with that. Model the type of leadership you want your leaders to have. Okay? And then the last thing I want to talk about is balancing your ministry responsibilities. All right, these are very important. I want to share this first statement with you. And that is this. People are always more important than programs. People are always more important than programs. One of the things that we've done during this COVID crisis, because I've just recently started at the district office, but being at Griffin, one of the things that we did from the moment it started is every week phone calls were made. Yes, we sent texts. Yes, we sent emails. But phone calls were made each and every week to families and people of our church. And I can't tell you the number of people that said thank you for making these phone calls. And so people are always more important than programs. So I want to challenge you, especially as a kids pastor, as a team, even as a team member, because we had our Ranger commanders, our girls ministry sponsors, our Sunday school teachers. They were all following up with families and checking on them as well. So we modeled that for our leaders, and so they did that as well. So here's some things to think about when it comes to people being more important than programs. Special occasions such as weddings, parties, when children are born, those kinds of things. Those are all important times in the life of a person, and we need to be there as much as we can to celebrate those things. Funerals are very difficult. So especially when you have children that are in your ministry, and it might be a parent or a grandparent or a family member. Anytime we can be there for those families. I remember one particular young lady that goes to our church. She's a sixth grader now. But I remember that her great-grandfather died. And I couldn't get into the funeral home until late. It was like, usually a viewing is like, 5 to 7 or 6 to 8. And I didn't get there until like 10 till 8 or whatever time it may have been. I know it was right before it was about to finish. And her mother told me, as I was walking out, she said, "I'm so glad you and Miss Misty came because you two are the two people that she was looking for to come." So that was highly important for us to be there and do that. Hospitalizations and sickness, when somebody goes in the hospital. You know what? If you're a nursery worker and one of the babies in the ministry is in the hospital, or even for a birth, just send a card. You may not be able to go yourself, but send a card. The children's pastor or leader is probably going to be going and visiting, or contacting them at least and doing those kinds of things. But I want to challenge you and empower you. Everybody who serves in kids ministry can be a part of this, making people important. Family crisis, divorce situations, there are all kinds of things that have happened. And then community opportunities, sporting events, recitals. There are all kinds of opportunities and things that our kids are involved in. I've got one young lady there at Griffin. She does a Facebook Live. She makes her own slime, and she does it quite consistently. And so I'll just jump on there and I'll ask her to make some kind of weird slime or make some kind of funny comment. But you know what? Her parents say she always loves when you do that. So when you make people feel, listen, think about it this way. What have people done to make you feel important? Again, those are things that you can do. When you take care of people, they will take care of you. Now, that's not why we take care of people. That's not why we do these things. We do these things because they're in our heart to do. But I do want to tell you that when we take care of people, they will take care of us, whether it means volunteering, whether it means helping with an event, all kinds of things. Workers. I have taught many people, and I've shared with many people, that ministry always happens best in the context of relationship. Most of the team members that we've gotten is because we've gone to them personally and talked to them, or we've built relationship with them. And matter of fact, we have 2 Ranger commanders. They're brothers. And they've been involved in Rangers now for probably 5 or 6 years. And my best friend and I, who I camp with all the time, we invited these 2 guys to go camping with us. And through the course of that camp out that we had, I think it was a couple of days, we were gone on a trip. And when they came back, man, they jumped right into Rangers because we got to share with them, doing it in a fun way, but we built relationship with them, and they've still been faithfully involved in Rangers. So I just want to challenge you with that. People will help you with big events. We have a lot of people there in Griffin that they don't want to serve on a weekly basis, but they'll help with some of the big events. And then donations. I mean, let's be honest. When you take care of people, there are some people that they will give to the ministry when it involves their children, because if you've taken care of their family, they're pretty sure that you've done that for other families. And so you'll get monetary donations, resource donations, time, skills, people who paint, people who build, all of those kinds of things. So that's about people. And then the second thing is this: manage your time wisely. Manage your time wisely. Write out your weekly schedule. What does your work week look like? Okay? What does your work week look like? What times are concrete and what times are flexible? I know certain times during the week that there are just certain things I have to do. So what do? I make an appointment with myself. And so if anybody, if I get a phone call or something, they know that I have an appointment. And it's okay to schedule time like that. Sometimes some things are flexible that you can do at different times, okay? So that time management is so very important. Plan and set goals. I want to challenge you with something we do at Griffin. I'm going to try to figure out how to make it work at the district level, but we call them 6x6 goals, 6 things to be done in 6 weeks. You find 6 key things that you need to do over the next 6 weeks. You have the goal, and then you write the objectives that's going to help you achieve that goal. It's a great measure of accountability. And you know what? I find that I'm a lot more productive when I do it. We still need to look long term. We still need to do those things. But I want to challenge you, 6x6 goals, six goals in 6 weeks. And they come in lots of different forms. It might be BGMC, it might be recruiting, it might be lesson planning, it might be a certain event that you have coming up. A lot of different things. Okay, Prioritize your time. Some things are just more important than others. Establish a routine. That's very important that you establish a routine. I have certain things that happen on the same day at the same time every week. Okay, that's very important. And take your day off. If you're given a day off, take that day off. It is so paramount to do that, to refresh, to renew your mind, to renew yourself. Okay, very important. Take your day off. And hopefully all of you have one. And then the last thing here, or letter C, the next last thing, is delegate. Delegate. Okay? I think that's, yeah, there we go. Delegate. Our God-given responsibility is to equip and to empower others to do ministry. Okay? That's our God-given responsibility. It's really to work ourselves out of a job. And so by delegating and giving responsibility to other people so that they feel empowered and equipped to do what God's called them to do. You delegate to be more effective, not to get out of working and serving. Okay? I don't just give people stuff to do so I don't have to do it. Okay? There's always purpose behind your delegation. Roman numeral 3 there, identify only what you can do. Identify what only you can do. As a children's pastor, there are certain things that I have responsibility for. Budgets, recruiting, running the kids' church service, those kinds of things. I'll have a different set of those ultimate responsibilities as a district director. But there are certain things that you and I cannot delegate. Okay, as the key leader, as the kids' pastor, we cannot delegate those things. But then, which leads us to number 4, identify what others can do and let them do it. Okay? Identify what others can do and let them do it. Give clear instruction and necessary training. Give clear instruction and necessary training. This is very important. If you're going to delegate, don't just throw them out there and say, okay, here, go do this. No, make sure they're clear. Make sure they're trained on what it is you want them to do. And then number 2, make corrections as necessary. Okay? Sometimes you have to change. Sometimes you have to adapt. And that's very important. I do want to tell you and remind you that not everybody is going to do everything exactly the way you do it. However, if they can do it effectively, let them do it. It's very important. And a 5th point here, I don't have a place for it, but you can write it down, is identify someone to pull alongside of you to learn the ministry. The key is to reproduce ourselves, to duplicate ourselves in others. So pull somebody alongside of you to learn what you're doing. If you're a outpost coordinator, JBQ coordinator, nursery coordinator, whatever way you serve, if you're a key leader, pull somebody alongside of you to help them learn the ministry. That's very important. And then the last thing I just want to share is letter D there. Find your ministry rhythm. Find your ministry groove. When you do all these other things, you will find your ministry groove, and you will be able to lead the way that you need to. So first and foremost, you need to balance your personal relationship with Jesus. You need to balance your family relationships. You need to balance your leadership relationships. And then you need to balance your ministry responsibilities. I hope this information has been helpful to you. You have the outline there. I am certainly available to try to expound on anything if you have more questions. I am available to help you in any way that I can. So I hope this has been a benefit to you. Again, thank you to Pastor Kendron, Pastor Ventnors for allowing me to be a part. And hopefully all of you will be able to walk that tightrope with balance and maintain that balance every step of the way.